LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
ESTS is ready for launch.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, April 7th, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 12:34 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. My name is Jesse Anderson, a lead manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX, joining you from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. You're watching a live webcast for our 24th Starlink mission and our 10th mission of 2021, all on reflown boosters. Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX to provide high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations around the globe. As the team continues to expand globally, we are also continuing to connect communities here in the United States. Just recently, the Nooksack Indian tribe became participants in the Starlink beta program. Located in Whatcom County in Washington state, most of the Nooksack tribal areas did not have the infrastructure to deliver high-speed internet to its residents. The Nooksack Tribal Council is providing more than 100 households in their community with Starlink service who had been negatively impacted by not having internet during the pandemic. These families began to receive service last month and are now able to use the internet for work, school, and even access telemedicine. In other exciting news, last week we announced the 4-person crew who will be the first private citizens to fly on board Dragon. We'll share these new details for the Inspiration 4 mission a bit later in the webcast. Now we're currently at T-minus 11 minutes and 45 seconds from liftoff of our next batch of Starlink satellites. So with that, let's take a closer look at the rocket on your screen.
I'm Yomezo, a Dragon propulsion engineer here at SpaceX, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it sits on our launch pad 40 at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Our 2-stage launch vehicle stands about 70 meters tall, and when it's fully fueled, it'll hold just over 1 million pounds of propellant, and the vehicle will burn through this in less than 3 minutes after liftoff. We prepped Falcon 9 for launch in our hangar at the base of the pad, and upon completing final checkouts, Falcon 9 rolled out to the pad with the Starlink payload and went vertical earlier this morning around 1:40 a.m. Eastern Time. The bottom 2/3 of the vehicle you see there is the first stage. It previously flew 6 times, having supported the launch of NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to the International Space Station, Anasis-2, CRS-21, Transporter-1, and 2 previous Starlink missions, the most recent of which was less than a month ago. The objective of the first stage is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. Once the first stage separates from the second stage, it'll make its way back down to Earth and target a landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. To give you some perspective, our drone ships are equivalent in size to a football field, and the landing area that you see right there is approximately 200 feet by 150 feet. That's big enough that a hockey rink would fit inside that landing area of the drone ship. If successful, today's landing will mark the 79th recovery of an orbital class rocket. Above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, which ignites after the first stage separates. At full power, the Merlin vacuum engine operates with the greatest efficiency ever for an American-made hydrocarbon rocket engine. The second stage is what will carry our Starlink satellites to orbit. At the very top of the rocket there is a large nose cone, and this is called the fairing. Made of a carbon composite material, the fairing protects satellites on their way to orbit and is jettisoned approximately 3 minutes into flight. Just like our first stage, today we will be using a flight-proven fairing and will be attempting to recover each half again with a contracted recovery vessel named Sheila Bordelon. Reusability is critical to what we do here at SpaceX, and it allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of space access. At just under T-minus 9 minutes, let's take a look at how we're progressing in the countdown.
The chief engineer held a technical poll at T-minus 1 hour, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at T-minus 38 minutes. Falcon 9 has been loading propellant since T-minus 35 minutes, and our fuel is a refined form of kerosene, which we call RP1. Our oxidizer is a super chilled liquid oxygen called LOX. And to densify the LOX, we chill it well below the boiling point, allowing us to fill the propellant tanks as much as possible. We use the same propellants on both stages, as the second stage is primarily a short version of the first stage, which is one of the many reliability features in the Falcon design. With fuel and oxidizer on hand, we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses TTEB, which you'll see at T-minus 2 seconds via the green spark right before the rocket takes off. In addition to RP1 and LOX aboard, Falcon 9 uses helium to keep the tanks pressurized in flight and the propellant flowing correctly into the engines without air bubbles as the propellants deplete. Helium load began before the webcast went live and will continue to be topped off until a minute and a half before launch. Very shortly, we will open the pre-valves between the first stage engines and the propellant tanks. And at T-minus 7 minutes, engine chill will begin. This will cool the turbo pumps and avoid thermal shocks when we start the pumps at T-minus 2 seconds to light the Merlin engines. The vehicle is healthy and we're currently working no issues. Range is still green. Weather is looking great, as you can see on your screen. We got some beautiful blue skies over there in Florida. We have a 90% chance of favorable weather for T0. And all systems continue to be go for liftoff at 12:34 p.m. Eastern Time. If for some reason we don't launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 12:12 p.m. Eastern Time.
In February, we announced the world's first all-commercial astronaut mission to orbit, commanded by Jared Isaacman, the 37-year-old founder and chief executive officer of Shift4 Payments, and an accomplished pilot and adventurer. The mission is named after Inspiration 4 because of the 4-person crew's mission to inspire support for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and send a humanitarian message of possibility. Since February, the other 3 crew members have been selected from the general public, and we are excited to tell you a little bit more about them, their roles, and the mission. Together, this 4-person crew represents the pillars and purpose for the Inspiration 4 mission: leadership, hope, prosperity, and generosity, with Jared representing leadership. Haley Arsenault of Memphis, Tennessee will serve as the medical officer overseeing medical care and experiments on the mission and occupy the seat of hope. Haley's selection is particularly poignant for this mission as she is a former cancer patient of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Now at 29 years old, she has become an inspiration to others at the hospital where she works as a physician's assistant. Dr. Cyan Proctor is a 51-year-old entrepreneur, educator, trained pilot, and active voice in the space exploration community. She was awarded the seat of prosperity after being selected as the top entrant of an independently judged online business competition conducted by the Shift4 Shop e-commerce platform. Dr. Proctor will serve as the mission pilot and back up the commander and support related needs throughout the mission. Christopher Simbrowski is a 41-year-old mechanical fault detection and diagnostics lead at Lockheed Martin and United States Air Force veteran. He was awarded the seat of generosity after contributing to a special fundraising campaign for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Mr. Simbrowski will serve as the mission specialist and help manage payload, science experiments, communications to mission control, and more. Over the coming months, the crew will undergo rigorous commercial astronaut training by SpaceX before their targeted launch date, which is no earlier than September of this year.
We're currently just under 4.5 minutes from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. We're currently waiting for the transporter erector, or the TE, to retract. The TE is that structure next to the vehicle behind the fairing, as you can see there, and the clamps are starting to open up there. Now, After the clamps are fully open, the transporter erector will begin to retract away from the rocket slightly. And then at T0, hydraulics will pull the TE farther away from Falcon 9 to clear the way as the vehicle lifts off. It looks like the clamps are just about finished, and the TE is retracting back. It looks very slight, but it's just enough to move away from the vehicle. And we use the TE to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position. It also provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. And it looks like that TE retraction is now complete. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Superchilled liquid oxygen is our propellant oxidizer, and when its temperature is increased, it turns from liquid to gas, which is why you see some white clouds around Falcon 9, and that's that liquid oxygen meeting the warmer...
bleed verification.
It's that liquid oxygen meeting that warmer, humid ambient air.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
And there's that call out that stage 1 LOX loading is now complete. Second stage will wrap up LOX load at T-minus 2 minutes. T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup, and this means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. Just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, we light the Merlin M1D engines, and we use TTEB, as I mentioned earlier, as our ignition fluid. And when TTEB mixes with oxygen, it burns a green-colored flame, and then we allow the fuel into the thrust chamber, and the engine comes up to full power for liftoff at T0. Now, the Starlink payload continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is still looking beautiful over there in Cape Canaveral, and the range has cleared the surrounding ground, water, and airspace and are green for launch today. Just waiting for that call out for second stage. Right on time. Stage 2 LOX load is now complete. And with the completion of LOX load, we will start to vent out the LOX line on the transporter erector, so you'll see a lot more of that white cloud that I mentioned earlier. There you can see it on your screen. Again, this is just the liquid oxygen venting out of the LOX line on that transporter erector. And just under 15 seconds or so, Falcon 9 will be in startup, and stage 1 and stage 2 will start to pressurize for launch. Again, the weather looks amazing over there. Some blue skies. Great weather for a launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There's that call out that Falcon 9 is now in startup. Now we're just waiting on the final go for launch from the...
Stage 2, press for flight.
Waiting for the final go for launch from the launch director.
Falcon 9 Starlink LDs go for launch.
And there it is. All systems are go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Now let's listen into the terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our stack of Starlink satellites into space.
Stage 1's startup pressures.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion nominal.
Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying our stack of Starlink satellites to orbit.
Nominal power and telemetry.
Max Q is the next major event coming up here shortly, which will now be throttling down the engines, the M1D engines on that first stage for. Max Q is the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle sees on ascent.
Vehicle is supersonic.
And the weather, again, is looking beautiful, clear skies with an amazing view of Falcon on ascent there.
Max Q.
There's that call out that we have passed through Max Q. So in about a minute, we'll have 3 events happening back to back. That'll be main engine cutoff, or MECO, followed by stage separation and SES1, or second engine start 1. Now MECO is where we shut down all 9 of those M1D engines on the first stage that you see burning there on your screen. That's in preparation for the second event, which is stage separation.
MVAC is chilling in.
Just heard that call out that MVAC chillin' has begun. Now stage separation is where the first stage separates from the second stage. And first stage will make its way back to Earth and attempt to land on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, while stage 2 continues on its journey with the third event, second engine start 1. That's where we light up that MVAC engine, and it will propel the second stage along with the Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit. Just under 20 seconds or so away from those 3 events, that's MECO, stage separation, and SES1. You should be able to see MECO here in a few seconds with those 9 M1D engines shutting down here shortly.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition and throttle up.
And there we've had main engine cutoff and stage separation. You can see that from the ground tracking view there. We did have a good call out of second engine start 1 on the second stage.
Fairing jettison confirmed.
And we heard the call out for fairing deploy. And it looks like we don't have those onboard camera views, but we can still see the first and second stage on your screen there. Now, as a reminder, we will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today with our contracted recovery vessel named Sheila Bordelon.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
And it does look like fairing separation was good. Now, as stage 2 takes our Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit, stage 1 will make its way back to Earth by executing 2 burns. The first is the entry burn. That's where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite. This helps to slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, the second burn is the landing burn, and this is the single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship, and that is that center E9 engine, which is just powerful enough to slow the vehicle down to touch down on that drone ship.
Second stage is following the nominal trajectory.
And we do hear that call out that second stage is looking nominal. Unfortunately, we do not currently have any onboard views of that second stage at the moment, but everything is still looking nominal so far.
If you're just joining us here, we did have a successful liftoff of our Stage 1 from Falcon 9 from
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
Cape Canaveral SLS-40, and we're currently Stage 2. We do not have the camera views right now, but we do have confirmation that it is still looking good. Again, our Stage 2 is delivering our Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit, and that's our stack of 60 Starlink
Stage 1
satellites.
entry burn shut down.
Second stage continues to follow the nominal trajectory.
We just heard that call out that Stage 1 entry burn was successful, and there you can see we do have our Stage 2 camera view finally back, and it is looking good there with that MVAC nozzle glowing. And there's our Stage 1 view back on our left as it continues to cruise down, getting ready for the start of its landing burn in about 30 seconds here. You can see those hypersonic grid fins of the first stage there on your left, and they control and help orient that first stage as it comes back down to
Stage
Earth.
1 transonic.
Again, Stage 1 will be targeting landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. And right before landing, it will deploy 4 carbon fiber landing legs.
Start of terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Have the start of Stage 1 landing burn. This burn will last about 30 seconds. You can see it coming down towards the Atlantic Ocean there. What a beautiful view from that Stage 1 camera.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
What an amazing view.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
What an amazing view of that Stage 1 landing burn. We got our cameras back just in time for that. And this marks our 79th successful recovery of an orbital class rocket. And the 7th recovery of this particular booster.
Expected loss of signal, Kate.
We had an expected loss of signal there, but
Nominal orbital insertion.
we did have confirmation of second engine cutoff and a good orbit. And now Stage 2 is going to coast in this orbit for the next 35 minutes or so. And while that happens, take a look at this animation showcasing where we are in the coast phase, and we'll see you back here at T plus 45 minutes for a second stage relight.
Expected loss of signal, Bermuda. Expected loss of signal, Newfoundland. acquisition of signal, Goonhilly, England. Expected loss of signal, Goonhilly, England.
Welcome back to the webcast for our 24th Starlink mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. So far, we've had an on-time liftoff at 12:34 p.m. Eastern Time. Our first stage came back and landed on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. And now our second stage is awaiting relight, or SES-2, second engine start 2, in just a few seconds here. And it'll just be a 1-second burn. It's a very quick burn. It may not look like much on your screen, but it does take us to our targeted drop-off orbit. So we should hear that call out coming shortly here. And there you saw it very quickly on your screen. We did get that green color flame. That's that T-Teb that I mentioned. We did have SES-2 and SECO-2. Waiting for confirmation of good orbit. And we did confirm a good orbit. So again, our Starlink sats will ultimately end up in a LEO, or low Earth orbit, about 550 kilometers above the Earth's surface, which is different than your typical geostationary or GeoSat, which orbits roughly 36,000 kilometers above Earth. And we have another 15-minute coast phase before we deploy our next batch of Starlink satellites into orbit. And during this time, the spacecraft will start to spin along its central axis, giving the Starlink satellites the momentum that they need to space themselves out over time after they deploy. So while this happens, sit back and enjoy some more space jams. We'll see you back here at T+1 hour and 3 minutes.
Expected loss of signal, Diego Garcia. Acquisition of signal, Tasmania.
Welcome back. If you're just now joining us, we had an on-time liftoff at 12:34 p.m. Eastern Time. Our first stage booster had a successful 7th flight, as well as landed for its 7th time and the 79th recovery overall. Stage 2 completed its 2 burns to enable reaching the targeted drop-off orbit, and now we are coming up on the deployment of our Starlink satellites here shortly. And we are waiting to see if we can get some live views. Otherwise, if we don't, we should be able to hear the call out for payload deploy. And that should be coming here in just under 20 seconds or so. And again, our second stage was spinning in preparation for the deployment of these Starlink satellites, and that gives them some momentum to spread themselves out over time after they deploy.
Payload deployment confirmed.
There we go. There's that call out, and we do have a visual of those Starlink satellites drifting away from second stage out in space. Now again, this is their drop-off orbit. So shortly, they will deploy their solar array, and over the next few days and weeks, they will distance themselves from each other and use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their operational orbit.
And with that, that brings our webcast to a close. Thank you to the Range and FAA for supporting today's mission. If you're interested in Starlink service, head over to starlink.com and sign up. And as always, thanks for joining us and have a great afternoon.